Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and I have the very much requested video that so many people asking me to show the Concord and 9th Christmas Cheer Turnabout stamp that I bought a while ago. So the whole idea with these turnabout stamps is you can rotate them and stamp an entire background, and they're really fun. They have a whole bunch of different designs. I have this one and a couple others. So what you do to start off with is you create, they call it a jig, and this is just a piece of cardstock. You could use a little piece of chipboard, whatever you want to use. I just have a piece of cardstock here and I cut it to 6 inches square. Then using my ruler, I just connected each corner so that I have that X there to mark the very center of it. Now, Concord and 9th has, thought it all out, has all their directions, everything. All you do is you can take the insert from the stamp packaging, flip it over, and they have a little grid on the back. And if this isn't big enough for you or you have trouble with it, I actually had to do my line a second time because I didn't have it lined up perfectly. But they actually have a printable one on their website as well. You could print it off, and then you line up the stamp on either this stamp packaging here or on the printable grid, and you'd use the ruler again. So you have the stamp face down, and I'm using a Sharpie, a fine point Sharpie marker. You just want to use some form of permanent marker. And I am marking this on the back of the stamp. So it's face down, it's lined up. So now we know where the exact center of the stamp is. And that's all you have to do. Once you have that done, you definitely need a MISTI or a similar stamp positioning tool. Concord 9th recommends this. It just makes it so much easier. So I line up my cardstock jig there in my MISTI, and then you just put the stamp face down and line up those center points that you created with your ruler, and then close the lid of your MISTI, and now it's good to go. So since I create A2 sized cards, that's pretty much what I'll always be doing. Obviously, you can create up to 6x6 with these stamps because they're so large. There is that smaller Dahlia one as well. I will show that in a future video. But yeah, you can put your paper that you're stamping wherever you want on this jig. I just centered it for convenience sake, but you could put it off to either side, whatever you want to do. However, wherever you put it, you want to make sure it stays in the same place. So I just put a little bit of my Xyron tape runner to hold the cardstock I'm stamping on that jig. So you can see, regardless of when I turn my jig, my cardstock stays in the same place every time. That's the key to this whole thing. So you just ink up your stamp it, and then you rotate your jig one time. You ink up your stamp, you stamp it, you rotate it again. So you end up rotating it 4 times, and that will stamp your entire background. That is the brilliance behind these turnabout stamps that Concord 9th has designed. And what you can do, I stamped all mine in black. So I just, inked up, stamped, turned, inked up, stamped, turned. But you could ink up, stamp, turn, and then ink up with a different color. So each time doing a different color, and you get this great, colorful, fun background. Everything's lined up perfectly. The sky's kind of the limit with these. These are really fun. I kept mine simple because I wanted to use the coordinating stamps in the set. Plus, I just didn't want to clean my stamp off after using VersaFine Onyx black ink, which is what I'm using here. That one is kind of a pain to clean off and then switch colors, etc. So I decided to just keep it simple and stamp my backgrounds. And after I did it the first time, it just got easier and easier. After you've made your jig, marked your stamp with the X, and then stamped your first background and used it once, it's like, okay, it just kind of becomes easier and easier. So I did it again on white cardstock. I ended up doing 2 pieces on Neenah Desert Storm, and then I stamped 2 backgrounds using white cardstock. And just doing the exact same thing. I temporarily adhered my white cardstock to the back of my little jig, and then would ink up the stamp it, rotate my jig, stamp, rotate, stamp. Really simple. And that jig I'm going to keep. I just actually inserted it in the back of the stamp packaging for this Christmas Cheer Turnabout stamp set. So the next time I pull it out to use it, everything's already done for me. I just got to stick it in my MISTI when it's lined up, and it's good to go. So really simple, and it's kind of fun to see it all come together, and you got this whole background stamped in no time at all. I think it takes about a minute after you get everything lined up and done to stamp it. So, like I said, you could stamp these in different colors. You could stamp and emboss them. You could yeah, do whatever works for you. I stamped everything in black because there's all these little coordinating stamps in this set of little solid images that you can stamp in different colors of inks to fill in these stamps, and they're incredibly easy to line up. A few of them I didn't stamp perfectly, like I was a little off center with a few of them. It didn't bother me at all. And I just went along inking up the little solid images in different colors. I'm using My Favorite Things little die ink cubes here. And I chose just 4 colors to use for this background. Obviously, you could go, again, sky's the limit. You could stick to just a couple colors. You could use 10 colors, whatever, floats your boat. But I decided to keep it kind of simple and stick to just 4 colors. And I would just go through, I've obviously sped this up a fair bit, but I was just going along and I would do all 4 pieces at once with whatever little solid image I was using. So I stamped the little mitts, the centers for those. I stamped the tree. There's this piece for the deer. And then there was this piece in the set that I was like, what on earth? I couldn't figure out what it was at first. And then I realized it was the piece for these candy canes to stamp the stripes. And that just blew my mind. And I was like, this is why Concord 9th is so awesome. Because yeah, I was able to just go along, stamp those. They lined up perfectly and all the stripes are stamped. And then for the gift, there's a solid image and it colors in the gift, but it leaves the ribbon area blank, so you can leave it as is, or you could color it in with a marker. I'm going to color it in with a glitter pen in a minute. So with the gifts, I stamped them all in one color, and then I cleaned off my stamp and then stamped them in another color, because since there's so many of the gifts on these backgrounds, I decided to use all the colors other than the brown. I used the red and the green and the blue. And I also liked how they look one way on the craft cardstock and then a different way on the white cardstock. So just kind of mixed it up to make a set of 4 cards, which didn't take very long at all. So after the gifts, I did the little hats, or toques as we Canadians call them. And same thing, they're sized perfectly to fit. There's 2 different styles, but the solid image for the toques is the same. So after I'd done all that solid stamping, I took a white gel pen, and on the craft cardstock pieces, I just scribbled it. I'm not being perfect with it to fill in the areas. I literally just kind of scribbled it on the bases of the little toques and the mitts, and on the deer faces, and then on the candy canes. I just quickly added that little bit of white just to make it pop. Obviously on the white cardstock, I didn't bother doing anything because it's white cardstock. But I really love on the craft how it just made all that pop. And then after I did that, I have a black Pilot envelope addressing pen because I couldn't find my black glaze pen. I found it after I made these cards. Whatever works. But I just took that and filled in the little noses on all the deer just to make it, solid. And then I took my little Stardust Jelly Roll sparkle pen, and that's what I used to fill in the ribbon on the gifts and the little details on the ornaments and the little tiny bits on the Christmas trees. And it just gives it that little extra bit of sparkle. None of this took very long at all because I wasn't being particular or careful. I was just scribbling that color on. And again, you could use colored pencils. You could color these in if you wanted. That would take a fair bit longer. But I did the stamping and then just quickly filled everything in with those gel pens, and it was quick and easy, and it just gave it that little extra something. So once I had all my background stamped, I have the coordinating ribbon banner die, which again was made to go with this stamp set. And I just put my little mini sidekick here on my desk because I wanted to die cut multiples of these. I'm absolutely loving this sidekick. You can get the Tim Holtz one as well, which everyone has been showing. The only reason I didn't get the Tim Holtz one is because I don't like the brown. Although I like the dies you get in the Tim Holtz one better than the ones I had got in the sidekick one. I don't make any sense. But anyway, this is a great little die cut machine, and I am loving it for small dies like this. So I die cut multiples of these banners. And then I actually pulled out my creative corners for the MISTI. They were perfect to hold these banners in place in my MISTI so I could stamp all these sentiments at once. The sentiments in that Christmas Cheer Turnabout are sized and on an angle perfectly to fit on this ribbon banner die, so you don't have to fiddle and try and make other sentiments work, which again, I love. It's all thought out. So I had my banner lined up with those creative corners just to hold them in place, and then I had lined up my stamps. Now I can stamp these one after another, so I'm going to do 4 of these. There are more sentiments in the set, but I decided to keep them all the same just for simplicity's sake. So that way I can ink up the stamp it, remove the banner, stick in the next one, and just do one after another. And again, this took like a minute to do all of these banners. So I got them stamped, and then I had die cut multiples of the same banner from some red cardstock that matched the red ink I used on all of the backgrounds. So I'm going to stagger all the stamped banners with the red, just so it's kind of popping out a little bit beneath each banner, just to give it that little extra something. So I just used the same tape runner and just added adhesive to the back of each banner, backed it with the red cardstock banner, and then went along, and again, didn't take much time at all. I always do things kind of assembly line style, do everything at the same time, and it just goes a heck of a lot faster. So I did 2 craft cardstock banners and 2 white cardstock banners, and I'm going to switch up what I add to each background here. I'm going to use the craft on the white and the white on the craft. And I die cut all my backgrounds. I was going to leave them as is and just keep things simple, but I couldn't resist die cutting them with the My Favorite Things A2 Stitched Rectangle STAX Set 2. I used the largest one from that. So it gives it that nice little stitched edge. And then I popped all those banners onto my cards with a little bit of foam adhesive just to pop them up a little bit and give them that dimension. And then I'm going to adhere all of these stamped backgrounds to their card bases with the same Xyron tape runner. I'm going to run that around the perimeter, put it a little bit down the middle. And then same thing, I'm going to use the white cardstock backgrounds on craft bases and the craft bases on white cardstock. So it just kind of switches everything up and gives it that little extra bit without a whole lot of effort. And instead of using the sentiment that comes with the set, which I didn't even think of until after I was done, I pulled out this other Concord 9th set that I have, the Joyful Noel stamp set, and chose 2 sentiments from the set. And I'm going to stamp them on the inside of these cards with that same VersaFine Onyx black ink. So I'm going to stamp all my insides with those sentiments, and then as a final little embellishment, there's these little snowflake images from the Christmas Cheer Turnabout set. So I just put them on an acrylic block, and I'm inking them up with that same turquoise ink. And I just inked it up, stamped it, and then without re-inking the stamp, I stamped it a second time and a third time, so I get the different shades from the same ink pad. And that's going to finish off these cards. So as always, I'll have a link below the video to my blog post with a link to all of the supplies used, so you can check that out below if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos, and I will see you all very soon in the next one. Oh, and stay tuned. I have giveaways coming starting Christmas Day. I have big things planned behind the scenes, so stay tuned. I will be back soon though with another video. Bye!